Hi there, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast.
For 15 years now, we've been proudly helping breeders promote hundreds of thousands of pedigree livestock with our easy-to-use animal management-driven website software.
And let's not forget about Hired Hand Live, where over $1 million worth of livestock is sold online each year.
We're excited to bring you market trends, sales data, advice from your fellow breeders, and stories from the ranch.
Our software makes managing your website and your animals a breeze, so you can focus on what you love.
So let us handle your digital chores while you tune in to another episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Welcome to this episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Today we're visiting the beautiful pastures of Whistling Longhorn Ranch in Fort Worth, Texas, owned by Scott and Danielle Mershon, who take a hands-on approach to raising their growing herd. I'm your host, Molly Clubb, and I'm excited to take you on another journey into the world of Texas Longhorns and the breeders who care for them. Thank you for joining me today, Danielle.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you start just by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your ranch?
As far as myself, I started with the Longhorn industry back in '99 when I was just a youth member myself. And since then, I have been able to have the opportunity to expand the herd. I still like to participate in my shows. I still like to participate in futurities and just getting my name out there. But it's an ever-growing mountain, ever going up the mountain as far as getting your pedigrees and the bloodlines that you're really searching out for. So it's just has grown a lot in particular the last 10 years.
I would have to agree. I remember when I showed in my youth days and then kind of didn't do much when I was in college. And even those 4 or 5 years, a little bit longer than that I was gone, when I came back, I couldn't believe the change that had occurred in bloodlines and pedigrees and horn and, all of that sort of stuff. So I imagine you've seen, the same thing kind of happen. Talk to me about when you got started in your youth days and just, how you've kind of progressed things getting to today.
Well, the very first encounter with any Longhorns is, in intermediate school, what do you want to do? Have sleepovers with your friends. And I invited one of my friends over to stay with me. And she goes, no, I'm actually going out to my ranch to work with my Longhorns. Why don't you come and stay with me? And so I went out to her ranch and essentially fell in love with them right then and there. And within 6 months, I had my first steer of my own that I was able to start showing. And that ranch allowed me to keep 2 animals out there. So eventually I did grow to 2 steers that I was showing. And then I started thinking more realistically as far as breeding and wanting to get a female who could reproduce a calf. And at that point, my 2 steers were kind of my babies at that point. I mean, I'd had them for a while, so I couldn't decide which one to sell to make room for the female. So I ended up selling both of my steers at that point in order to bring my females in. And since then, I at that point, I was just buying my females from people that were local that this particular ranch knew that, kind of worked with me to get me started as far as that goes. Since then, I was able to grow my herd a little bit, and we had some acreage over at my aunt's house that we were able to keep a few more animals over. So she had hers, and then I had mine as well. And we steadily kind of grew our herd till about 4 or 5, not a big herd, but you learn to be super selective as far as when you can only keep that limited amount. So you have to kind of decide, do you keep the mama or do you keep the calf outside? And then the next step is, as I'm still growing up, I still want all my calves to go to, the best homes possible. I pretty much had the goal of selling them before they were weaned so that when they got weaned, they were able to go to their new home or the mama was able to go back. During that time and with showing and everything, I had some wonderful opportunities to be able to breed my females to different bulls, to be able to upgrade those genetics as well. And it really wasn't until I started dating my husband that we acquired our first actual lease pasture that we were able to kind of really step up our game and bring in our first animal that we felt had genetics that people knew and were happy with. And at that point, when I first started it, all my animals were halter broke. And when I bought that first cow, that was my first unhalter broke female. And as I've progressed through the lease pastures and getting new animals, I would say the majority, probably 75% of my mamas now are not halter broke, but I still have a few that are. You just kind of learn that, definitely your qualities over quantity. And so what I've done over the years is, sell off 2, 3, or 4 to get that one really good animal and just slowly kind of bring your breeding program up to where you kind of want it to be.
So what year was it when you acquired your lease pasture and you kind of started focusing more specifically on the genetics of your maternal lines?
I want to say that was probably 11, 12 years ago.
Okay. So have your breeding strategies changed in those past 11 or 12 years? Are you still focused on the ones that you started with, or have you, adapted to those a little bit?
Of my original show cows, 2 of them have passed away because of old age, but I still have one of the daughters in my herd. That's probably a female that most people recognize when they think of me, and that's my AK Color Me Perfect cow. And so she will always be in my herd, but she was kind of the last one that kind of tied back to that beginning of where I went.
So I always go, look through guest websites before we do these interviews, and she hopped out at me right away. If you didn't bring her up, I was definitely gonna ask you about her because she is just gorgeous, and she's got good colors. She's got, that twisty horn set. So she definitely stands out on your cows page.
Yeah, and I get more inquiries about that particular female as well. But as I've told several people who have asked me about buying her, she is kind of a lifer at my place. She will stay with me until she passes on. In the meantime, I get to enjoy having her calves. And actually, this year I explored into a little bit of embryo transfer. And I actually flushed her a couple times early in the year, and her first embryo calves should hit next spring.
Nice.
So I'm really excited.
Well, I feel like everyone has to have one of those lifers that are just gonna, live out their days in peace at their ranch and aren't for sale. Who did you flush her to?
I flushed her to drag iron, Jamaicism, and iron span.
So potentially some super, super flashy calves then.
I'm thinking so, and with the iron span bringing in that super twisty line that Iron Span's dam has, I'm hoping to still continue to twist, just maybe add a little bit more tip to tip, because she's definitely not running any tip to tip measurements for her age or anything, but she's very unique.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you more about your involvement, your history with shows, but your current involvement with helping put on some shows. But I picked up on something you said when you were sharing your story, and I want to dig into that first.
Okay.
So all of the cows you bought up to a certain point were halter broke, and then you bought some that weren't halter broke. I feel like there has to be a story in there somewhere about the first time you had to halter break your own.
Well, I've been halter breaking them pretty much as long as I've been showing, and I've had some really good mentors that has given me kind of pointers as far as what you do if you have a bad kicker, or just tying them up, or tricks to get them to walk. So I've had a lot of help along the way, and I know I'm getting prepped for the ITLA championship show right now, and currently I have 10 animals I'm in the process of working with and getting them ready to show.
Who are some of your mentors that you mentioned?
One of my biggest first mentors is a lady named Raylan Stevens. She's out of Chalk Mountain. She was always a huge supporter of the youth programs, and I remember her hauling me around to shows that my parents couldn't go to, and we went up to Iowa, we've gone up to Kentucky, we've gone up to Missouri, Kansas, and so she's really allowed me the opportunity to grow. She's helped me critique animals as well. And she was one of my big mentors as far as when I started judging some of the things that she taught me to really look for and pay attention to. I owe her a lot because she's helped me get where I've been at.
Have you been able to kind of pay it forward now that you're in the position of hosting shows and judging? Have you taken some, younger folks or newer folks under your wing that you can share with us?
I've always tried to help out anybody who has come to me with answers. I get a lot. I've had several youth that have worked with me and has showed animals for me. Is there one particular person that I've taken under my wing? Not quite. I've kind of wanted to find somebody with that, but I just haven't quite gotten that lockdown. But I continuously ask youth if they want to help show for me, and I've had several youth members who have also, when I ran out of time, had helped me halter break some of my animals as well.
Well, maybe this can serve as a shout out to, anyone who's listening that might be looking for a way to get involved, right?
Definitely.
Well, tell me a little bit about the shows that you're currently helping with today, what your role is, maybe what folks who haven't been to a show before, could expect if they were to go. Just talk me through all the different aspects of those.
Well, I host the two shows that the Chisholm Trail Texas Longhorn Association holds a year. We have one in the spring, usually in McKinney, Texas, and then we have one in Decatur, Texas, around Labor Day weekend. I've went back and looked at my records at one point, and it looks like I've been actually hosting shows for the last 15 years. It just has varied with how many each year. So I consider myself the show chair, and that goes from anywhere from finding your judges to keeping in contact with your facility owners to getting your show books and your show entries, getting your award, making sure your insurance is up to date for their events. One of the things I always say at my shows is, even though we're an ITLA affiliate, we are open to TLBA registered animals as well. We don't turn anybody away just because they don't have the ITLA papers at these particular shows. We like to try to have as much involvement as possible. And one of the things I always stress at my shows is I want it to be a fun and relaxed and not a stressful event. I know my spring event, that's typically my bigger of the two shows, and my aunt and uncle, they smoke pork butts, and we have pulled pork sandwiches that they provide free of charge for lunch on Saturday. And my mother-in-law usually makes brownies or cookies or something like that to have for desserts. So that's usually there. I've got a lot of volunteers who step up to help me, do ring stewards, passing out awards, everything along that. I've got a great crew that comes and helps with the non-haltered show. I really appreciate everything that they do for me. And my fall show is kind of a quicker show. It's just a one-day event, and it's a come-as-you-are show. It's haltered and youth only, and it's no bathing, no show halters. It's just kind of like a pop-up jackpot show without being a jackpot show. A lot of times, since it is kind of at that end of the year, we get a lot of the younger classes in, that this is like their first experience with being into the show ring. So there's a lot of animals that don't always behave, but they actually have that exposure and without that stress or the big lights of one of your bigger events.
I like that pop-up idea. I feel like it's a way too to maybe keep the cost down a little bit for the folks who want to maybe test the waters with showing, but don't want to invest in, like you said, the show halters, all of the wash equipment, that sort of stuff. They can just halter break them, put them in the trailer, and see how it goes.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I believe that your involvement in the halter and non-halter shows has also led to some involvement and some success in participating in futurities. Tell me a little bit about that crossover and your experiences there.
I've actually really started enjoying futurities quite a bit. It's a lot less work when it comes to having your animals in a futurity versus a haltered show, as far as bathing them and clipping them and having to walk them and lead them. You can actually sit back and kind of enjoy watching them go about. I like the ideas of futurity where you kind of look at an animal on an individual basis. versus, when you have, say, a non-haltered class, you're placing them, but you're kind of comparing them to everybody all at once. And in the futurity level, you have to look at the animal for the individual points that you like for them. So I feel in that sense, I really like it. And that the fact that there's 5 judges typically, and then the scores get averaged, kind of gives you that kind of a fair look at everything. The only thing I will say is, coming from a show world, I do miss having my reasonings as far as why animals get placed as they do. But, it's all based on those individual judges that day. That's kind of what I have to think of is it's just one group of opinions that day. And I take the animals that I really like to see do well. My first couple futurities definitely was not successful. I had a few animals that I thought would be really good. And then I realized when I get there, well, they didn't quite have the color that they were looking for. They didn't quite have the horn they were looking for. They weren't quite conditioned as well as some of the other ones. So those first couple futurities that you go to, I find it more of a learning experience just to kind of see what it's all about. Look at the other animals in the class. Look what your kind of your competition in that fight. And then sometimes you can gear your future picks more towards that. I've had a few of my animals that have placed well in futurities. I had one of my females that actually won her class in Legends a few years ago, and that was always exciting. I've had one female that has placed multiple futurity classes as well. I say if you place in the top third of your futurity class, you should be really proud, no matter if you're into money or not. Because most of these animals that are coming to futurities are the cream of the crop. They are the best of the best that everybody wants to show up. So if you can place in the top third, I feel is really still a big accomplishment.
Well, one thing I picked up on that you said is that it took you some adjustment to go from the show, the reason for placing a certain way in a show versus the reason for placing a certain way in a futurity. And I just want to, hound in on that point a little bit, because I think this is one that maybe hasn't been brought up on our podcast before, but you definitely, made me think of it. So, in the show world, when the judges place the animals, they're on the microphone telling you why they picked the grand champion or why this one's third instead of first. And they're giving you all of the reasons. They're talking about their body, their horn, their, temperament. And like you said, at a futurity, it really is just it's the numbers on the sheet and what they average out to, if the high and the low get thrown out and there's no comments that go into it. So I'm glad you brought that up, for folks to kind of understand those two differences for sure.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Looking for top quality Longhorns and a taste of true Texas spirit? Look no further than Cantera Cattle Company. Our passion for Longhorns shines at Old Gringo Ranch, where tradition meets excellence. Visit us online at CanteraCattleCompany.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for the latest updates and ranch life fun. Ready to experience it yourself? Schedule your visit by emailing canteracattle@gmail.com. Remember, God is great, Longhorns are good, and life is crazy.
Hey, if you love From the Pasture with Hired Hand, why not go check out my podcast, The Big Iron Podcast with Andrew Shigori, where we dive into the world of registered Texas Longhorns and what it means to be an agriculture entrepreneur in the modern world, with a little southern flair, of course. Find The Big Iron Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you a new Longhorn breeder eager to educate yourself on market trends and sale prices? Stay in the loop with our text messages. Get the latest updates, events, and insider tips on all things Longhorns delivered straight to your phone.
Stay informed by texting website to 888-700-8131, then reply with Longhorns. That's website to 888-700-8131. Sign up today and take your breeding program to the next level.
From the Pasture by Hired Hand is presented by R3 Hilltop Ranch. Located in Chilton, Texas, R3 Hilltop Ranch has been breeding registered Texas Longhorns since 2006. What began as 3 heifers has grown into our current herd, which you can explore on our website at r3hilltop.com. We're passionate about loud colors, longhorns, and docile temperaments. But it's the easy-keeping, low-maintenance traits of Texas Longhorns that initially attracted us and continue to drive our herd growth. In addition to livestock, we proudly offer certified Longhorn beef products. Visit r3hilltop.com/beef to learn more. Thank you for listening and enjoy exploring our ranch online at r3hilltop.com.
So talk to me a little bit about how things have come to be with you judging. So I know that you have gotten involved with judging some of the halter, the non-halter shows, but also I believe you've been asked to be a futurity judge. So did you take classes? Do you feel like it's just how you've educated yourself over your career breeding Longhorns? How did that come to be?
I know with the ITLA, you have to go through steps in order to be what they consider a qualified judge. You have to attend a judging seminar. You have to apprentice under a teaching judge, and you have to be able to judge a youth show. And when you judge your youth show, that show chair is supposed to give back feedback to the panel that ultimately decides whether or not they get approved to be a judge. Now, the approval in the ITLA just allows you to judge any of the open shows, whether that's the haltered show or the non-haltered show. Those do have to be with one of the ITLA qualified judge at the ITLA shows. The youth show, there's a little bit more flexibility to that. They still want you to go through the judging clinics and have, a little bit of an apprenticeship. But the people that judge in the ITLA are actual ITLA breeders or Longhorn breeders, so they'll know what to look for as far as the individual traits that really make the Longhorn special and unique. So when I actually got approved, I was probably the youngest judge to get approved, and it was when I was 18. And at that point, the rules were if you participated in team judging for 4 years prior to the approval process, you could still do the judging clinic and still have to apprentice, but you could go ahead and apply to be a approved judge versus you have to wait till you're 21. That's been a lot of fun. I've had the opportunity to go across the country, judge in different shows. I've gone to Oregon. I've gone to Maryland. It's been a lot of fun because it's opened up and allowed me to travel and meet new breeders and see different animals in different regions, because there's definitely a change. A Texas Longhorn in Texas does not always translate to the Texas Longhorn in, say, Idaho or something like that. There's definitely different regions, and the animals kind of reflect that. Going into futurities, it's a little bit different because you still have to base on that individual animal, but it's all based on numbers. So there might be something that you look at with an animal and you just can't pinpoint, what it is that's bothering you about it. That's really hard to translate into oral reasonings when you're on a microphone doing a haltered show. When you have that in futurity, it's a little bit easier to be able to do your markings just because you don't have a particular reason for that. But this is something that sits wrong.
What's your favorite show these days? And it can't be one of the ones you put on. You have to pick a different one.
Those are too much work. As far as one that I participate and actually, enjoy, I will say that when it comes to shows and everything, I've really enjoyed some of the events that the ITLA has hosted themselves, like the Sulphur Springs show that they usually do in spring. And I'm looking forward to the championship show as far as that goes. Futurity-wise, I always have enjoyed going to multiples of them. It's gone through several different names now, but I always enjoyed the Indian Territory Futurity, the one that used to be in Red River, and then last year it was the Battle of the Prairie that's held in conjunction with the Texoma sale. And that's probably always been one of my favorites to go to. It's just always been a fairly good run event, and for some reason my animals typically do better at that one, so that always helps also. One that I've attended but never have taken animals to is I love the event that Dan Huntington puts on up in Wisconsin, the Cheesehead Futurity. I've had the privilege of going up there and judging a couple times, and he knows how to host. I mean, you're well fed all the time. There's music. Everybody just has a good time. It's in a great location. And when it's held, it's usually about 20 degrees cooler up there than it is down here. So that's always a nice break too. But I think that event is extremely well run as well.
Well, I think the Texoma sale, which used to be the Red River sale, which might have been something before that, if I remember correctly. Now, my memory's not that good, so you tell me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the first ones where you won your first gun, was it not? Because I think we were
Yeah.
there and you were so excited that your animal did well and you won a rifle. I can remember that. That was a
Yeah.
while ago, but it was good.
It was a while ago, and unfortunately, I don't have that animal anymore. But yes, that was the first time I actually won one of the rifles, and was just beyond happy and excited about that. But yes, that was one of the first times.
Well, let's switch gears and talk about your breeding program again. So where do you see yourself 5 years from now with your breeding program?
5 years from now, that's kind of hard to say. I'm definitely always trying to improve. So I've started taking some of my best, most consistent production cows in my herd, and I have started doing a little flushing just because, they're getting older, and I feel like if I can get some more heifers out of them to elevate my herd even further, that would be beneficial. I always look at the bulls that are kind of on trend as far as which ones get into hype, which ones being sought after. I do take that into account when I make my breeding decisions. But I also, coming from the show background, I also look and make sure that they have the structure, the conformation, the completeness that I want to add as well, so that I don't go back on the conformation that I set kind of as a whole in my herd.
I feel like you're the type of person that takes a lot on themselves in terms of your breeding program and your ranch. Do you do your own AI work, and are you involved with the flushing? And if so, did you take classes for that, or tell me about that?
Currently, all of my AI and my flushing is through EJS Reproductive Service at Justin Savio out of Boyd, Texas. He's been doing my AI work probably for the last several years, and he's the one who we've just started flushing some of the animals to this year. But it's really neat. He kind of talks to me about the process, and it's been a very big learning process for me because I'm not used to it, but he's never once hesitated to explain the process to me and explain where we're at with any of my decisions as far as that goes. So, but no, he does most of it, but luckily he's only about 30 minutes away, so I can always go and see what's going on too.
Do you feel like it's going to be hard for you to be patient on those pairings now that you've kind of switched gears to flushing and almost knowing what you're going to get, I guess?
Yes, I am actually very impatient. My first actual embryo calf is due come mid-January, so I'm like biting my nails to see the result of that. Yes, I'm definitely a little bit antsy, and anytime you have an animal AI, it's the same thing. I mean, once you get that confirmation on it, it's like, man, now you have to wait so long before you actually see what it results in. So it does kind of teach you patience because you kind of have to have it at this point.
Who's kind of your like all-time favorite Longhorn, one that you aspire to hope that you have a cow like someday?
It's funny because I actually made a comment earlier on to somebody that probably my favorite and most iconic Longhorn in the breed is Horseshoe J Important. I love just the twist. I like the structure, the horn, and I had the privilege of seeing her when she was at Jimmy's place in Alabama, and nothing's as majestic as watching her walk over a hill and just come walking up to you with the beautiful horn set. And she's probably my favorite cow in the breed.
Do you have a favorite bull?
I think as a production wise, I love the animals that WS Jamaicism produces. And that's the reason I ended up flushing my Color Me Perfect cow to Jamaicism to kind of see what that comes out to. But I love the smoothness, the femininity, the horn that you get from his calves.
I feel like that's a mating, though, you're going to have to be extra patient with. That one might take a few years to see the horn and what they're going to do.
Exactly. Yes.
What if you had to pick one breeder whose program you aspire to have a herd like someday?
That's a little bit tough. There's a few up there that I think are all worthy of the title. A breeder that I feel that I really hold in high regard, and I've been able to go and see the ranch and see the animals, and they remind me of a person that I want to grow up to be, is Miss Nancy Dunn and the herd she has. When you see the consistency of her animals, it's not just one, it's not just two, it's her whole herd is consistent and tight. She's not afraid to share knowledge with me. She's had the opportunity to, really show what she's got. And it's just, you don't understand exactly what she has until you've gone out there and really looked at her herd. But she is definitely someone that I would like to aspire to be like, because she's such an independent lady and has done wonderful things with her animals.
I would completely agree. And it's extra special that she's a female in the industry as well.
It is.
And now let's hear from our advertisers.
Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out? Rural life can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be.
Welcome to Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, the podcast for women who are craving connection, laughter, solidarity, camaraderie, and just overall encouragement in your everyday life and dreams.
Each week, your hosts, Annalise, that's me, and Courtney will cover topics such as farm life, mom life, making money online, side hustles, hobbies, sharing on social media, jobs off the farm, and so much more.
Us rural gals need to stick together, so saddle up for some fun, real, and unsolicited advice and stories from our everyday farm lives.
Grab a drink, we're Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, and we're here to help. Listen wherever you find podcasts.
Planning a live auction and want to reach more buyers? Hired Hand Live brings the power of the internet to your event, allowing bidders from anywhere to participate in real time. We specialize in integrating online bidding seamlessly with your live auction, ensuring that no one misses out.
Your livestock plus our technical expertise equals one successful auction. Let Hired Hand Live help you expand your reach and maximize your results. Visit hiredhandlive.com to learn more.
Hidden Springs Ranch, located in central North Carolina, is committed to registered Texas Longhorns. From our high-end breeding stock down to our delicious Longhorn beef sticks, check us out at hslonghorns.com or on Instagram at Hidden Springs Ranch. Hidden Springs Ranch, where they're bred to turn heads.
Overwhelmed with your digital chores? Let us lend a hand. From websites and animal management to internet auctions, graphic design, marketing, search engine optimization, and more, Hired Hand Software is your hired hand for all things digital.
Specializing in pedigree, livestock breeds, and beyond, we handle the tech so you can focus on the animals you love. Visit hiredhandsoftware.com today, where your digital chores just got a whole lot easier.
Let's talk a little bit about your website. I believe you all are on your second website design with us, and each time you've changed it, you've kind of reorganized, redone a few things. What works well for you on your website?
I love just a quick access to everything. I'm a stickler. I like my website being up to date. And there's usually something on my website that changes at least once a week, whether that be a new measurement, whether that be a new picture, whether that be a new animal that's added. I like to try to keep that as up to date as possible. So it makes such a nice, quick reference to anybody who's potentially interested in an animal. I know when I sell animals, particular to new breeders or people that just want a few, I always print them out the animal information sheet that has, the full pedigree on it so that they have it for their records as well. But I love the quick access that I have for it.
Do you find yourself using the awards and honors section a lot for your class winners and your futurity winners?
I do. On the animals that I do take to futurities and shows, I try to get those updated probably within a few weeks of the event so that if people look on one and they see that I've taken one and there's placings, they can kind of see how they overall do.
Do you have a favorite feature to Hired Hand that you enjoy using on the back end?
That I don't know. everything's really easy to use, which I appreciate. It's always difficult, when you switch to a new software and everything, as far as are you going to be able to make it work, and how easy is everything going to be to upload and change and everything. And I say just the ease of it has just been awesome.
So for folks that haven't been to your site before, it's Whistling Longhorn Ranch. And that brings up a good question, I feel like, which is, how did you come up with your ranch name? What's the story behind it?
Well, when I first acquired my first kind of bigger lease, it was in Roanoke, Texas. And in the area that we got it in, it was essentially a little area called the Melody Hills. And I was like, well, wouldn't that be funny if we just did whistling like the Longhorns were whistling in these Melody Hills? And so it kind of stuck with that. And we don't have that lease property anymore, but the name's definitely kind of stuck now.
Is your brand affiliated with your ranch name, or is your brand something totally separate?
Well, if you look, I have a W and a sideways S on it. And the W, it's almost like the W is whistling with the curve of the S on its side. So I kind of try to make it look like that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Hired Hand Live, because I know some of the sales that I've worked and or that we've been at, you've either been a consigner who has maybe sold to someone online, or you've been an online bidder or buyer. Tell me about how often you're on there and your involvement on the internet auctions.
I will be honest and say that I have that screen popped up on my internet at all times, because I always like to see what sales are coming up. And just out of curiosity, looking at the consignments of each one. And if there's one that really kind of captivates me, I start investigating and going to people's website. But that's definitely one of the tabs I usually have up on my phone when you open up my internet browsers. I like to see what's coming up, what's going out. I love the aspect of being able to watch the sales when I'm not there. I really enjoyed that. I was watching the BNC sale just this last weekend. Even though I was working, I was still watching it kind of on my off time. And bid on a couple. Yeah. and even, I was able to do the bid your max amount kind of thing, so that if I wasn't able to tune in right when that animal was going through, I could at least still have the bid. Unfortunately, I lost that one, but it does happen that way. And as far as, when I've had animals consigned and then looking at the hired hand, it's kind of neat to see if they get that initial bid before the actual sale or anything. So it's kind of fun.
So you mentioned that sometimes that's the start of your research, or where you start to really look at animals you're interested in. Who would the last 3 Longhorn websites in your search history be?
Last 3 actually was probably DCT Cattle Company, was actually one I had pulled up earlier today. I pay attention and look at Bowling Longhorns quite a bit as well. I look through a lot of websites on a very regular basis. But I think the last one after that was probably Savannah Bell Farms. But I definitely spend a lot of time going through people's websites and investigating. And I guess one of my biggest things is if the website's not up to date, it kind of bothers me, just because I like to have stuff as up to date as possible.
I completely agree. Preaching to the choir. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of different topics, from shows to, your involvement as youth, to futurities and judging and your breeding program. Is there any aspects of any of that you feel like qualifies you to have some good advice to new breeders or folks who are maybe looking to get involved in the industry in a variety of different ways?
What I tell people is ultimately breed for what you want. There's always going to be trends out there. That's always going to change from year to year. But ultimately, if you breed for what you want and what you want to look at, you're going to be a lot happier that way.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about your breeding program or your ranch that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I always am willing to help anybody who asks. So I get a lot of buyers from me who I still on a regular basis get messages from, asking me random questions, asking me about this or that. And it's fun to see animals that I've sold progress. but it's also fun to be able to help and give advice to people that are needing it. I was in the same boat, when I first started it, and I felt like I had a big start as far as having everybody help me out. So I always try to help where I can.
I think that's great. One last question for folks who are listening and can't see our video. Your shirt is one of our old ones. It says, "Easily distracted by Longhorns." Does that shirt ever get you any questions about your herd when you're wearing it out and about?
Always, always. It definitely gets those questions going. I think the funnest times is actually when you haul in a trailer, having somebody, and you stop for gas and having somebody come up and really want to look at the cows and everything like that. And, any time it is to be able to promote the breed, I love it. I've done several events where I've taken cows to people, let people pet and touch the horns, and just the questions you get from these people are just, we take it, we take it for granted because we're around it all this time, but the people who have never been around it, you're thinking, oh yeah, that does make sense. They would like to know that. I think one of the biggest questions is, can I touch the horn?
Or how they think only the males have horns, right?
Yes, I get that quite a bit too.
Well, thank you for joining us on From the Pasture with Hired Hand. We hope you enjoyed this visit to Whistling Longhorn Ranch and learned something new about the world of Texas Longhorns. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. You can always explore more stories from the pasture by visiting our website or Danielle's, or following us on social media. Until next time, remember to appreciate the pastures you roam and the traditions that make them special. Thanks for joining me today, Danielle.
Thank you.